Hello, photographer. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Picture. It is me, Cardi. Today we're here to talk about the most common mistakes that I see from photographers who submit pictures, photographers on Instagram. I see these mistakes continually. So today, I thought, why not get into the mistakes that I see the most often and talk about how to fix them and how to avoid making them all together. How's that? You guys happy? Hopefully you guys having a good Sunday, a good weekend. Welcome. 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 Glad you're here. By the way, Brandon West. Brandon became a member and he leveled up. He became a member of the photo review level. Thank you, Brandon. Welcome to the crew. As you guys might know, I have raised the prices of my photo reviews after the last 3-hour episode and after the fact that I had 36 submissions last episode. We have to kind of tighten that. And how we tighten that is by doubling the price. The value, I'm seeing that you guys are seeing the value in having your photos reviewed, how I can control that and control my time. So I'm not doing 3-hour streams, control your time so you're not watching 3-hour streams, is I raise the price. So if you'd like to continue to have your photos reviewed and you want to still have access to the submission folders on my Discord, you have to be photo submission level and again, I have member level 1, which is just Cardi Crew level, which gives you access to live streams. All of my live streams, I do private live streams for members only quite often, which are when I'm in my studio shooting and directing models. I live stream those from time to time. I also release videos first to members and then the next day they go out to the public. And also my during the week streams are members only chat. So it gives you access to that chat. And then the next level is if you want your photos reviewed, $10 and you get everything before as well as that. Okay, so let's get into the 10 rookie mistakes that I see photographers making all of the time. The first big one, even before I get into these 10 mistakes, the first mistake people are making is the second that they are about to buy their camera. They buy their camera and they also buy the camera, instead of buying body only, they buy it with a kit lens because they're like, oh, the lens plus the body in a lens is only $100 more than the body only. So I'll buy a kit lens. And then you get one of these. And I got to tell you, this kit lens is the worst thing to happen to photography because of the reason that I'm about to explain to you. The kit lens. First of all, if you're shooting with one, you're killing your images and you're killing your photography. So this is the first thing that you do, is you take off the lens cap and you notice how absolutely little the opening is. Oh my God, if you take off the rear cap and look at this, come on, this is a toy. I have eye tracking on, so I gotta cover my face. This is a toy. So let's go. Sebastian upgrading his membership. Thank you, Sebastian. I appreciate you, my guy. Let's go. So, oh, Riz, this is a kit lens, bro. This is an 18 to 45. You've seen them as 18 to 55s as well. People buy them. In fact, people buy them and use them and then wonder why their photographs are crap. So let's get into exactly why when you use a kit lens, your photography can't possibly be good. This is why. First of all, this is why. A kit lens, which is an 18 to 55 or an 18 to 45, which I have right now. They are aperture 3.5 to 5.6. That means when you're wide open, you get 3.5. If you're zoomed at 55, you get f5.6. Okay, so let me tell you now why that's bad. Okay, so imagine you're shooting outside during the day. Outside during the day in normal conditions, say an open shade would be 125 at 5.6 at ISO 400. Okay, but that's with a 50 millimeter lens. Okay, now watch this. I have people who submit photos and I look at their ISO setting and their ISO is 3200. And I say, that's because you have a kit lens, right? And they're like, how did you know that? Well, this is why. It's because, number one, you're shooting at ISO 3200 because you have f 5.6 because you want to shoot the picture at 55 millimeter, which is basically normal. Imagine if you had a 50 millimeter 1.8, which costs roughly between $150 and $200, sometimes even less. Okay, so ISO 3200, this lens that's now an 18 to 55. So imagine you have to shoot at 5.6 because that's as wide as the lens goes. So your reading is 3200, 5.6, call it a 50th of a second. Okay, so if your reading is 3200 at 5.6 at a 50th of a second, because you can't go any more open than 5.6, that's the result. 3200 has noisy images and blah, blah, blah. I'll get into that later. But watch this. Watch when you have a lens that goes down to 1.8. Watch what happens. ISO 3200. Now you can shoot ISO 1600 and shoot it at, oops, let me take this line away, and shoot it at f4 at still a 50th of a second. Or you can shoot ISO 800 at 2.8 at still a 50th of a second. Or, oh my God, you can shoot ISO 400 at f2 at a 50th of a second, which is exactly what I said. On average, your reading should be around that. And I said it should be on average around there. So just by shooting with a 50, and I also say, if you have a 1.8, I wouldn't go any more open than f2. So we'll stop there. So you can see just by shooting with a 50 millimeter instead of an 18 to 55, you're able to shoot at ISO 400 at f2 at a 50th versus shooting at ISO 3200. And again, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 stops brighter. 4 stops brighter, which is a huge, huge amount. So that's the reason why we don't shoot kit lenses. And because of this, so many people who have kit lenses, they can't expand into photography. They don't go far with photography. They usually just quit and they don't know why. And they think their camera sucks. They think their camera sucks, but you're using the wrong lens. So that is rookie mistake number 1 off the top. But that's not even number 1. That's just the first thing that people do even before they take a single photo. Okay, so let's start with tip number 1, proper focusing. Proper focusing comes from understanding that when there's 2 different types of cameras. Number 1, there's DSLRs. People are still shooting with DSLRs. And when you shoot with a DSLR, when you look through the camera on your DSLR, you see these little squares and they go like this, 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 like this. Okay, but guess what happens? And again, this is the last time I will be talking about any of these basic things on my channel. This is basic photography. So it's the last time I'm going to be talking about it because I'm trying to tailor this channel towards people who know this stuff already. But the problem is I still see people making all of these mistakes. So I'm going to talk about it once. Okay. If you have a DSLR, meaning a non-mirrorless camera, you have to select your focus point. You have to select it. So This is your frame. And if what you're trying to compose, and I mean, imagine if you turn vertical, it's now a vertical frame, but we're basing it on a horizontal frame. Here's the first thing. You have these as a guide. So don't drop anything important down the center of your frame. Put it, and also you have these as a guide to divide your frame on the left side and on the right side. So put something important on this side or on this side, and then choose the focus point that's the closest to the thing that you want to be tack sharp. You cannot ever choose all of your focusing points. How many people I see choosing all focus points? Now you're letting your camera choose what the most important thing is, and the camera doesn't know. So choose one focus point that is either at the top or down here or over here based on where your important thing is, so you don't have to recompose so far. If you leave your focus point in the center, you have to move the camera over here, lock the focus, and then move the camera back to where you want to shoot the picture. That distance, moving back that far, will make your pictures out of focus, especially if you're shooting near wide open. So choose a focus point that's closer so you don't have to move as far when you're recomposing. Next, if you're shooting mirrorless, use eye tracking. When you use eye tracking, irregardless as to where your frame is, if the person's eyes are here, the camera's going to grab. If the person's eyes are over here, the camera's going to grab. And you can compose independently of as to where the person's eyes are. Or with a mirrorless, and you're not shooting a person, you can use tap to focus. So you can literally just have your person, offset, and then you can just tap, or you can have your tree offset and you can just tap and it's going to focus there, and then it'll tell the camera that that's where you want it to focus. With mirrorless camera, you can put that focus square anywhere that you want. So that is focusing 101. Let's look at some images where I've seen improper focus. This is an example, improper focus. You can see, and also not is it only improper focus, but it's also high ISO. And you can see that high ISO is creating noise. And you can also see that high ISO is being battled with a very, very slow shutter speed in order to compensate for that high ISO. So therefore now it's camera shake and blurry. There's not really a single part in this image that is in focus. Improper focusing. Next one. Same idea, same vibe, camera shake and out of focus and high ISO, all due to a scenario where you're shooting in the wrong scenario without bright enough lights, with a lens that doesn't go wide enough. All of these problems happen once you start getting into high ISO. Improper focusing. This is another scenario. Improper focusing. If you look at the focus on this image, there's nothing that's actually really in focus except this area back here. This is the sharpest part of the picture. But when you look at the image here, you see, is the hat in focus? Kinda, but not really. Is the person's face in focus? The eyes, the glasses? Not really. The smoke makes it hard to focus, but is the beard in focus? Not really. So focus is, as a photographer, that's first day. That's the first thing that we have to learn on the first day, is how to master our focus. Another example, which comes from using a kit lens. Again, this is what your images look like when you use a kit lens. It's not sharp. It can't be sharp because this little piece of thing has like 16 pieces of glass in there. 16 little pieces of glass, where a 50 has 6. So this is why kit lenses aren't sharp. And it's not the highest quality glass. And the mount to the camera is plastic. It's like, not all of the kit lenses have plastic mounts, but Many of them do. They make them as cheap and as fast as possible. It's not about quality. It's about you being able to take a picture on Christmas Day when you get it and then go out and buy another lens. All right. Improper focusing. It's an image killer. It's crucial to make sure that your images are in focus. And imagine all the hard work that you do on finding the set, coming up with the idea, blah, 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 you shoot, and your pictures are soft. And then you're not checking your frames. Checking your frames. So, also half press when you're shooting DSLR, half press to focus and take the whole thing. Okay. The next one, white balance. White balance is about maintaining accurate color. When white balance is set incorrectly, your images are too warm or too cold, which affect the overall tone of your images. This image, improper white balance, although it's close, it's a scenario where it's mixed light. There's partial room light, which is giving a warm tone here on his head, but it's also window light that's coming from this way, which is shade and giving cold light. So images that involve mixed light are incredibly difficult to white balance. How you counter that is by proper white balance, choosing one thing that you want to be neutral, one thing. Again, improper white balance. This is also bad image size, but you can see this is color balanced warm, but it's also color balanced extra warm, and it's also underexposed. So because of that, the white balance and the fact that the white balance is off makes it even more accentuated. Let's look at another one. White balance. When you're shooting existing light indoors, that existing light and the color temperature of that existing light is all over the place. We have no idea how that existing light is going to read on camera. And when it's a light bulb, a pot light, some house, like whatever that kind of light is, it's not conducive to photography. It's just not. So daylight, photography lights, that's what we use. Halogen, tungsten, like indoor household bulbs, you really need to be good in order to understand how to use those type of lights. And you master that when you're an interiors photographer. When you shoot architecture, you realize how to deal with color balance. But when you're a new photographer and you're walking around a museum, cool, shoot pictures for yourself, but pulling out your pro camera and thinking that you're making anything, it's an exercise in futility. It's a rookie mistake, and just stop making those photos. Next one. The next one that I see all the time. Oh, also, when you're shooting, we shoot raw. So because we shoot raw, we can color balance anything after the fact. But if you go out and you're shooting on an open shade day, set your camera for shade. Every single frame that you take is going to be warm and have like that right feeling. But if you set it for daylight and just shoot, all your pictures are going to feel cold. So even when you're looking at them, they're not going to be great as you think that they are. Or here's another thing, shoot raw, but set your camera picture profile to monochrome. So you don't see color balance at all. In fact, you don't see color at all. You just see composition, line, shape, texture. Because visually, if the composition is there, a strong photograph is a strong photograph, whether it's in color or in black and white. And if you shoot raw, you can bring it back to color and color balance it properly in post-production. Let's go, Riz. Welcome, man. Welcome. Thanks for becoming a member. I appreciate you. Welcome. You get the smoke. You see, every time somebody becomes a member, I like to burn my place down. Riz, welcome. Thanks for becoming a member. So, white balance. Set your camera. If you're going out on a sunny day, I mean, my camera, secret time, is pretty much always set to auto white balance and raw. Because I shoot most of the time in open shade, but I set for auto white balance, so I'm not stressing in between frames. But in post, I color balance and color correct every picture using the eyedropper easily. That's what I do. Let's go. All right, so that's white balance. Number 3, composition, framing. The composition and framing side of your shots. Wrong proportions, headspace. There's so many different things that I see. Perfect composition, perfect cover composition is so achievable. It's so achievable. Non-distracting background, room for the masthead. Every single vertical is a cover. Every single horizontal is a double page spread. Those are the rules. You don't have to follow them, but also don't complain if you don't work. Don't complain if no one hires you. Let's look at composition. That was the first one. Composition. Composition is how we speak visually. It's a language. There's an understanding. This is such beautiful composition. But when this photographer submitted this photo, I said quickly, I could make this photo even better. Simply with just a little bit of a zoom in. And watch this. Suddenly, this is completely a different photograph. And now you're really taking away that top tree line and taking away that brightness, which ends up becoming a distraction, just pushing it up just like that. And suddenly now it's another photograph. We have to be masters of composition, masters of understanding how to actually do this while we're shooting, when we're shooting our frames. The reason that I say I shoot 100 pictures for a single frame is these nuanced tweaks that I do in between the pictures, in between those frames. All right. And again, that's a great example. Composition. Absolutely every vertical is a magazine cover. Understanding how to make your subject the star. Composition. It's our weapon. It's our weapon. And if we shoot understanding the rules, and I'm not talking about composition rules, I'm talking about editorial rules as to how to get published, how to get hired. And then wrong proportions. This isn't a photography size. You can't free crop and just invent your own ratios. This is a magazine cover. You can't just crop it how you want. There is no free cropping, by the way. If you're free cropping your images, what are you doing? Where does that image fit? Yeah, sure, you can custom frame it, but your long, thin photo or your odd proportion photo, it doesn't work anywhere except for a custom. So think about how to shoot photos in proportions that people see every day. 4:3, 3:5, 16:9, 3:2. All right. And horizontals. When we're shooting horizontals, and also horizon line, just last point on vertical, where we drop our horizon line can't be right straight through the center of our photo, because now there's one photo here and there's one photo here. So we have to push our horizon lines down. So the table actually becomes a base and the set goes on top. And that's the difference between your set being here and you aiming down on it and you aiming that way at it. It's so simple, but small things that, again, mistakes that newer photographers make that I'm just going to help you with all in this one episode. Truly composed images captivate your viewers and make your photos stand out. Let's talk about double page spreads. Let's talk about double page spreads and how you hear me say every vertical is a cover and every horizontal is a double page spread. Look at this I shot for submission to a magazine. Double page spread. Magazine cover. Magazine cover. Double page spread. Double page spread. Magazine cover. Magazine cover. Double page spread. Double page spread. Magazine cover. Double page spread. So, do you see how that's how you do it? Offset, 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 cover, 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 cover. Your whole portfolio needs to be made up like that. Your whole portfolio. And when you look at your portfolio, when you look at your editorials, I mean, yes, this picture screams because it's heavily dead center, but this would also work on a double page spread if it was a lay flat. But you'll see, it's either a cover or a double page spread. Everything that I shoot. So once you understand how to shoot a double page spread, and by the way, that's this week's assignment. If you're not in the know, this week's photo assignment is shoot a double page spread. Yeah. When you're shooting vertical, understand that you're working with the 2:3 frame ratio, which translates to 8:12. But Instagram and most magazines, they're 4:5 proportions or equal to 8:10 or 9:12. So you have to understand that every time you shoot a vertical picture, you got to crop a little bit on the top and on the bottom. Every single vertical when we shoot is this. It is 8 inches that way, and it is 12 inches that way. So when we go to Instagram, we lose 1 inch on the top and 1 inch on the bottom. This now is 10 inches. So that's how we shoot when we shoot vertical. Sorry, my bad, vertical. I'm already on to the next one. So we have to be conscious of that, which means we can't put stuff, our head space way up top to the frame, because it's going to get cut off because you're going to lose the top and the bottom. And also, you don't get to shoot the entire frame as your picture. That's never the case when you're shooting vertical. The entire, like you have a person's feet right here and you have their head right here. When you're shooting, you have to figure out a way to have their feet with plenty of space here and the head here. So knowing after the fact it's going to be, you're going to lose some. How many times have you shot something and went to Instagram and then realized, oh my God, I'm going to lose the feet or I'm going to lose the head? Have you experienced that? Okay, horizontal. Every horizontal picture is 2 pages in a magazine exactly with no cropping. This now is 12 inches and this now is 8 inches. The gutter is directly in the center. And that now, when you cut this in half, makes literally this becomes 4. And this is 8. Oh, no, sorry, this is 6. My bad. And that 6:8 proportion ends up being exactly 2:3. So when you shoot, let's do the math. So this is 6, and then this is 8. So 6:8 is 2:3, which exactly is a vertical times 2. So when you shoot horizontally, it's exactly like you're shooting vertical and then that twice. So because of that, because of that, it's like literally there's no cropping. You can't crop. And if you drop something in the center, you can't move it over because there's no image to move over. What end up happening is this, and then you have to recreate that with generative fill or whatever the hell you're trying to do. But what you can do is just realize with horizontal pictures, you can't crop it. It's the full frame, and you can't change the proportions. So you have to shoot horizontals perfect. And stop dropping your horizontals dead center. Okay, so that is a little bit about, what was that one? Composition. Yes. Okay, next, ISO. ISO, high ISO. It affects your, ISO is like your image sensitivity. Again, we're talking basic stuff today. Higher ISO is digital noise. Digital noise is ugly. So we have to choose the lowest ISO that the scene will allow. The lowest ISO that the scene will allow. And also, if you have good glass, you can shoot more wide open. Again, I'm not saying shoot all the way wide open because that opens up other problems with focus, depth of field, and shit like that. But I'll show you. This is what happens when you shoot high ISO. Your images look like pointillism. They look like a Monet painting. This is what happens when we shoot high ISO. So we have to try to shoot the lowest ISO that our scene will allow. And I talked to you earlier about lens selection. ISO. This is another scenario. Look at the skin. That's ISO 3200. And it tells you also focus. You can't even see focus with ISO 3200. And also, if you're shooting ISO 3200 on a camera that doesn't cost $5,000, ISO 3200 is going to look bad. My camera, 3200 is fine, but I have an R5. But, you know, if you're shooting with an APS-C sensor and you're shooting at ISO 3200, the results are what you see. So, but you can use high ISO. And I'm going to show you a photographer shot this image at ISO 3200. 3200. Look at this. Where's the noise? It's because of exposure. It's exposed properly. He shot this at ISO 3200, but it's exposed properly. So here's why high ISO creates noisy images. Again, this is the last time I'm ever going to be talking about this basic stuff. High ISO. When your sensor is made up of large pixels that are very, very sensitive to light. They are made up of medium pixels that are kind of sensitive to light. And they are made up of very, very small pixels that are not very sensitive to light at all. And all of these together pack tight to make your sensor. Now, when you underexpose an image, imagine these are your pixel sizes all the way down to microscope. And they go, this is the most, let's go, Tom Fox, upgraded to reviews. Let's go. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you for believing in me, my guy. Appreciate you. Let's go, Tom. Welcome. So, understand that ISO goes from most sensitive, pixel sensor sensitivity goes from most sensitive to least sensitive down here. Now, outside on a sunny day, you are easily exposing all of your pixels all the way down to the smallest ones, which guess what happens then? No grain, no digital noise, none, because you've exposed the entire range of the pixels on your sensor. Cool? But guess what happens? When you underexpose your image, when you don't give your image as much light as it needs, yes, you'll get an image, but it stops here. It stops. And then you don't expose all the smaller ones that fill in all those gaps that make your image noise-free. You don't get those images. You don't get those pixels. And what happens when you don't? Noise. So this is what digital noise looks like in action. This is only half of the sensor's pixels getting any light. This is what it looks like when all the sensor's pixels are getting light in the same scene with the same ISO. Interesting. So you can shoot high ISO, but it has to be exposed properly, because guess what else? You could shoot low ISO. You could shoot ISO 400 and still underexpose it, and guess what? You'll still get noise. Because underexposure, irregardless as to where you are on the ISO range, will still result in noise. If you have your sensor set, welcome, Walter. If you have your sensor set at 100 and you underexpose it where it needed like twice as much light, you're still only getting half, and it'll still be now an ISO 100 image that's noisy. Okay. Tip number 5 is all about shooting RAW. RAW is a digital negative. And for those who remember film, there was no digital. We shot film, and that was the negative. Guess what happened if you lost your negative? You couldn't reproduce the file. So guess what you would do? You'd take a picture of a picture that you made from the negative, and then you'd make another negative from a picture. And guess what happened with the quality? Quality would get way lower. So the magic of RAW. It's a digital negative. It preserves all the data and all the quality. Shooting RAW, it's your safety net. You can rescue images that you can't rescue with a JPEG. RAW is uncompressed data. It's as close to a digital negative as we can get. And also, only the camera can create a RAW file. You can't make a RAW file without the camera. So you put your copyright information in the camera and your RAW files are embedded. You also, when you're importing your RAW files in Lightroom, you add your copyright metadata to the RAW files when you're importing. Now, everything that you process out from that has your copyright information embedded. And because you own the RAW file, you can prove that you have the RAW file. Your RAW file is embedded with your copyright. People who steal your image can't then make a RAW file from your JPEG that you're watermarking on the internet. Because of that, and because there's software that you can put and say, find any uses of this image on the internet, they can just go out and find it. Because you have the RAW file, it's an instant $25,000 lawsuit, and that you'll win. So people stealing your images, good. It means you're good enough that people are stealing your image, and each time they do it, it's $25,000 for you. So, RAW. Uncompressed data. I'm going to show you a short workflow. I'm going to write it down so you can just watch this over and over and over again so you can understand, and you can do this with every single one of your images. You shoot RAW. You bring those into Lightroom or Capture One. You add your metadata, which is your copyright information. Okay? Then you process in Lightroom. After you do your adjustments, which when you do your adjustments, they get baked in. But not baked in, I mean like you can change them. Process and adjustments. And then you process them as... Oops. you process as a 16-bit TIFF. TIFFs are uncompressed. There's only two file formats that are uncompressed. PSDs and TIFFs. I use TIFFs. Okay, so do what I do. Don't use PSDs. I use TIFFs. 16-bit TIFFs. Okay, uncompressed, which they're uncompressed. You don't, and you save them as the TIFF. My uncompressed 16-bit TIFFs are 256 megabytes each, and I shoot a 45 megapixel camera. Then, now you have an uncompressed 16-bit TIFF. Then, you bring them into surgery. Surgery is Photoshop. Then you do retouching. Skin, whatever you need to do. All your levels and color and all that stuff you do in Lightroom. But skin and like fine retouching, you do that shit in Photoshop. Okay, so you do your retouching, save it again, resave. Now it's a 16-bit TIFF retouched. Again. Okay, now from here, this is your master. This is your master portfolio image. Make a folder of these. Okay, they're called masters. Well, actually, you can call them TIFFs. I call them TIFFs. So masters will make you confused with the masters folder from your Lightroom library, blah, blah, blah. So those are your masters. From your masters, you create an action in Photoshop, which is you open and then convert. So you convert from 16 to 8-bit, then resize, and I make mine 4000 by 100 DPI, 4000 wide by 100 DPI. Then I save for web.
Welcome.
In a new folder. And then, welcome, Court of Public Opinion. Let's go, baby. What a name. Let's go. I save it in a new folder. And then when Photoshop says, do you want to save this image? I say no. And then you say, don't save. Because what it's going to do is it's going to revert all this stuff that you've done now. You've converted it from 16-bit to 8-bit. You've resized it to 4000 by 100 DPI. You've saved for web in a new folder. And then you want to close that image. And it's going to say, do you want to save it? You say, no, don't save. And what that's going to do is it's going to put it right back to the master. It's going to leave it as the master, but also create a new JPEG at 4000 pixels by 100 DPI at 8-bit. By the way, you can't make JPEGs the way that you need to make them small as 16-bit. So you have to make sure that you do the conversion. And then there's your picture. Now, guess what? You want to make another JPEG. So now you have a JPEG, and that you can share. But guess what? What if it's too big for your needs? What if now this JPEG is 5.6 megs and you want it to be 100 KB? Well, just go now up here and resize, open the master.
Member.
Let's go. Brother Les just gifted. My actual brother is Opal Customs. Les, thank you so much, man. Not necessary, but thank you. Thank you for doing that. It's
New member.
This is my family, my older brother. And believe me, I'm 53, so my brother's 8 years older than me. Do the math. And he's still watching, still supporting. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We're on text like just before. All y'all who are getting membership notifications right now is because my big brother just gifted you all. That's the love of family that you're feeling right now. Thank you, Les.
New member.
So know that that's how you do it. It's super simple, but this is how you anything you need. If you need a different size, go back to the master, open, make a new size. There is no, because also JPEGs compress the information. They compress the information and it's gone forever. So once you JPEG a picture, yo, James Lewis on the gifted train. Literally, I can't put more smoke in here or I'm going to start coughing. Although this is non-toxic smoke, there's a lot of it in my place right now. Just FYI, there's a ton of it up in here. There's a ton of it in here, so I have to like go easy. But thank you, James. I'll give you a little boop. So that is what you do with every image, and there's no exceptions. There's no exceptions because have you seen what JPEGing a JPEG looks like? Have you seen how bad I mean, if you've watched any of my photo review shows, you hear me call it. I'm like, you're JPEGing a JPEG. Because that's what happens. It's like, yeah. I shot raw. I made a JPEG, but then I wanted to change something. So like, I just opened it and just fixed it. Just a little thing. It's just a little thing. And then, you know what? I didn't like that. So I opened that. You know, I made it. Each time you open a JPEG, fix something, save it, close it, you're cutting data until you have no data left. Like you have an image that you thought, oh my God, I shot raw. And why does it look? It's because you're JPEGing a JPEG. That raw file you used once on, it's like, have you seen the movie Multiplicity? Literally, Multiplicity is a hilarious movie. It's with yes. Michael Keaton. This is what happens. Michael Keaton's got a wife and he's like, oh my God, I wish there was two of me because I want to be like a good husband to my wife, but all these chores and all that stuff she wants me to do, I wish I had a clone so they could do that so I could be a better husband. Oh my God, he figures out a way to clone himself. So now there's two of him. So he can serve his wife and also like, you know, have somebody doing that other stuff, right? So he has his clone doing this other stuff and like he's able to like serve his wife and blah, 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 and be a great husband and never forget anything. Guess what? That clone's like, yo, why am I doing all of this stuff when this guy who's me gets to do all the cool stuff with the wife? So the clone thinks, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clone myself so I can get someone to do this work so I can try to like negotiate. So he makes a clone of the clone. Guess what? That clone is not so quick, but hey, all it has to do is like clean up and blah, blah, blah. So that clone is like, okay, I don't like cleaning up anymore, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? That clone is like, screw this. And he makes a clone of himself. By the time it's like the last clone is like, rah, 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 rah. So it's kind of just showing you like, you can't clone the clone. You have to always go back to the original. Go back to the original and you'll have perfect masters and all your clones will be beautiful. But when you clone the clone, that's called JPEGing a JPEG. And each one of your JPEGs is going to be just a lot dumber than the last one. So don't do that. That is the magic of RAW, and that is the workflow for RAW processing. Now you know, now do it every time. Oh my God, I didn't know that I process in 16-bit. Guess what? Now that you do know, and you process in 16-bit all the time, your images are going to take up more space because they're going to be twice as large. But guess what? They're going to have millions more colors, millions of data points more because you're giving your images the full range. Wait to open an 8-bit image, open a 16-bit image, and just look at the difference. And you'll be like, oh my God, Cardi, I love you. Thank you so much for showing me that. So next, let's talk about experimenting with exposure. And a lot of people feel like they should shoot manual, which again, you'll never hear me say shoot manual. I made a whole video about it. The only time to shoot manual is when you have a light meter, and the whole M setting on your camera means manual input from another source, like a light meter. Or you've taken a shot in aperture priority or shutter priority and got the right exposure, and then you switch to manual, put in those input points, took a couple of pictures and we're like, you know what? I want this a little darker. And then you adjust it a little darker and then you shot, and that's the picture. You're still getting your original reading from a different input source, which is the camera's own meter. So There's something to be said about experimenting with exposure, but that could easily just be done with exposure compensation. Intentionally shooting it under, intentionally shooting it over. And that's what I recommend that everybody does. You want to see some great examples of experimenting with exposure? Here's one. Great example of experimenting with exposure. A forced vignette. Guess what? Don't ever aim your camera at the sun with a person because you're going to make that person a silhouette. Unless, guess what? You want that person to be a silhouette because it's powerful and engaging and actually makes the photo more powerful than if you didn't. Experiment with exposure. Here's another one. Amazing exposure. Guess what? This is overexposed. This is overexposed by 1/3 of a stop. But guess what? This is perfect exposure. And if this photographer submitted this picture at normal exposure, it would have been underexposed. So normal exposure in this case wouldn't have worked, but plus in this case worked. Normal exposure is just that. It's normal. So you have to play with your exposure. Rarely is normal where it is. It's always or. So understand exposure compensation gives you that control to let you make creative decisions beyond where the camera suggests. Here's another great. I mean, this is done with artificial light, but you can see his exposure. It's a touch, maybe I would say like 2/10 of a stop under here, but it works. Look at how they have stuff in the background, but the stuff in the background falls off. Look how distracting this room is when I show it to you with isolated items. But when you see the whole photograph together, there's absolutely nothing distracting about this picture. It works absolutely perfectly. So understanding how to play with exposure and have different exposures in different points of your picture. A different exposure here than way down here or way back here or way over here. And that can only be done once you start getting into the next level, which is understanding artificial light and playing around with studio light and getting a light meter and knowing ratios. Exposure, you master exposure with natural light and then you can fly. You really can fly, but you have to master it first with natural light. And you want to talk about perfect exposure, but it's not normal exposure. This is perfect exposure. This is ISO 3200, but it's silhouetted, it's backlit, and it's all done on purpose. And it's the absolute exact thing that I would have done in this scene. It's so great. Like, know when to like mess around with exposure. I use aperture priority whenever I'm not shooting in the studio. Did you know that? I use aperture priority every time I'm shooting when I'm not shooting in the studio. Or I use shutter speed priority if I want to do slow shutter tricks. But aperture priority 90% of the time when I'm not shooting in the studio. And exposure compensation. Did you know that? And I'm also a professional photographer that's been doing it for 33 years. Well, how come I don't shoot manual? Why? Because I understand exposure. I understand exposure so much that like I can look at one frame and like that sets the tone for the exposure for the whole thing. Like I can tell if the sun goes down and the exposure drops like 2/10 of a stop. Like ask Jason when he assists me how I notice the slightest nuance of lighting changes. So on to tip number 7, which is minding the background. Understanding that the background is part of your photograph. So minding the background, minding where the most important thing is, and making sure that you're not putting other things that are going to literally distract you from our main subject, which is this here. Imagine, I ask you all to just hold up your finger and put your finger right where you see that stuff in the background. And does it look better when you hide that? Yes or yes? So minding the background and scanning the background on every photograph we do means that we're able to get photographs that you're able to focus on just the thing that you want your subject to look at. We only want our subject to be looking at, our viewer to look at. We only want our viewer to be looking at one thing. The background can either enhance or detract from the subject's impact. So you have to do a quick image scan to make sure that you're creating super non-distracting backgrounds. And once you master the idea of non-distracting backgrounds, then suddenly it opens up editorial work. It opens up shooting for magazines. It opens up shooting commercially. It opens up actually being able to be hired to shoot photos. Even if you've missed assessing your framing before taking the shot, you can also catch those issues on the back of the camera by reviewing your shots. Like, as every time an idea changes, you're checking the frame, you're scanning the frame to make sure that there's nothing distracting anywhere. All right, so let's talk about tip number 8, embracing natural light. New photographers, natural light is the ground floor. This is the ground floor of any building. The base, the basement, the foundation, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, exposure, focus, like all the fundamentals, that's like basement. That's like foundation. You can't grow without having the basement and the foundation, you know? So natural light is first floor. If you haven't mastered first floor, why are you lighting anything artificially? If you haven't even mastered natural light yet, you know? So I suggest, I still, natural light, you can be a full-time photographer and never touch a light. But again, for those who embrace natural light and jump into it and really try to be doing things unique, they're able to get some incredibly amazing photographs. The sun's in the right time only twice a day. The first hour and a bit, 90 minutes, and the last 90 minutes, you know? Like, you go like this with your hand, and this width of your hand, when you go like this on the horizon line, each width is an hour. So as a photographer, you go out and you go like this. Oh shit, 3 hours before sunset. Let me wait a little bit. Go like this to the horizon, sun. It's like, oh shit, 2 hours. Let's start shooting. Because at that time, subjects can look directly in the sun with no like, ah! Try doing that at any other time of the day, you know? So that's how you can tell, by the way. From the horizon, each width of your hand is an hour. So natural light is a photographer's best friend. Mastering it takes time and practice. You always see me shooting open shade. Here's some open shade. And what did I do? I took my signature black background outside. I have outdoor space here. I have an amazing area to shoot portraits. So look at the catch lights in her eyes. You can see that this is natural light photography. So look at the power of natural light. Look at how absolutely incredible it is. Like, look at the nuance between light and shadow. This is all natural light. And because I've removed the background, because I've put her on my signature jet black background, it looks like studio photography, yes or yes? This is outside. This is all natural light. The amazing things that we can do with natural light, but not too busy background, blah, 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 shooting in mixed light, sun and shade on the same face, and like wrong placement of the, like all super simple mistakes. Just never shoot where the sun is. The sun is hitting the situation, don't shoot there. Do that, and your photography looks like this. So easy. All right. Here's another one. Natural light. Natural light. Adewale. This is my work, by the way. Indoor, natural light. Direct sun, natural light. Indoor, natural light. That strobe, ignore that. Outdoor, natural light. Look at this skin. Look at how his skin reacts to that shade. Shade. Shade, 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 shade. Learning how to manipulate natural light is amazing, man. It's so fun. It's so fun. Here's magazine editorial, natural light, shot for a magazine, double page spread. And the cover, natural light. No excuses, man. There's literally no excuses. No excuses. Natural light. There's so much that we can do with natural light, guys. Natural light. All natural light. All of this. All of this. Tip number 9. Experimenting with angles and perspectives. You can't be afraid to get creative with your camera angles to a point. Whether you go low or high, you have to explore unique perspectives and find ways to separate your perspective from other people. Look at this incredibly creative angle. It's a great, great idea and makes this dog feel larger than life. Creative camera angles. Look at this one. So great. I would never, ever, ever do this, but it works perfectly. It absolutely works perfectly. What about this? Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant angle, perspective. I say, oh my God, don't ever shoot low angle unless you do, and it works, and then do it. For sure, do it. Absolutely, you must do it if it works, if that's the way that it works. Once you understand the rules, you can break them. As a photographer, your unique perspective's your superpower. You got to challenge yourself to innovate and revolutionize your framing. What new and exciting angles can you bring to the table? And last, number 10, you got to shoot. Welcome, Alexander. You got to shoot. You got to shoot a lot. I mean, in this digital age, you have the freedom to shoot without worrying about the cost of film. We don't have to worry about film. Like it used to cost me $50 every time I ran a roll of film through my camera. Now we don't have to stress. You can experiment. You can push boundaries with your camera. And I want you to imagine this. Imagine if you shot photos every day for 30 days. And imagine if you shot every day for 30 days, photographs that were tailored specifically to the niche that you're trying to get into. You'd understand that you'd be 30 times ahead of the photographer that just shot once a month. You know that, right? The photographer that shoots every couple of weeks or once a month has to relearn micro things every time they go to their camera because they're not doing the reps. And the last thing I'm going to touch on today is the pottery class analysis. A pottery teacher had a class and she divided her class into 2 sections, okay? And she gave half the class the task to make 1 clay pot a day for 30 days. 1 clay pot a day for 30 days. She gave the second half of the class up to 30 days to make 1 perfect pot. Okay. And then after 30 days, the teacher...
Gifted member.
Let's go. Freddie gifted 5, baby. Freddie, you crazy. Thank you, man, for your support. You're absolutely crazy. All of you who are gifting memberships today, thank you. Freddie, thank you. All y'all just got gifted.
New member.
You're going to hear my secretary go crazy. Thank you, Freddie. I appreciate you. So guess what happened? After the month, they blind judged the pots. They didn't judge them knowing what group did what. In fact, the teacher put all the pots together and blind chose what the best pots were. She chose 5 best pots, the best pots of the entire lot. And guess what? All of the best pots came from the side that made a pot a day. In fact, there wasn't a single winner from the side that had an entire month to make a perfect pot, because they were all perfectionists. They were all trying to make perfect pots, and they'd get halfway and they'd scrap it, and they'd start again and they'd scrap it, and they'd start again and they'd scrap it. They actually never completed a full pot till the last day, where the other half of the class was making a pot every day and sharing the information that they learned with other people in the class that were also making a pot every day. So they actually, one person would learn something, tell the whole class, and the next round of pots, they were all doing them that way. By the time they got till the 10th day, they were putting out perfect pots every day, and they were streamlining and making their process better every single time. The ones that were doing it 1 pot a month, they were all frustrated because nobody was doing anything. No one was finishing. As a matter of fact, half of the group didn't even come to class until the last week because they knew they had a whole month to build the pots. So they were all scrambling and freaked out and unorganized because we give the amount of time allocated to the project. So if we're given a month to do something, we take a month to do it. But most of us cram all of it in the last day. So they were making pots in a day and didn't have the month of experience that the other group did. So there is great power in a tight brief and a tight deadline. It's why I give you photo assignments every week. It's why I suggest that every emerging photographer makes photographs every day. It's the fastest route to success. It's how you'll get better faster than the people who aren't. And when you try harder and you push into the unknown and you push yourself and you do this thing that you claim to love more than anything, you do it 100%, you do it every day. After 10 times of shooting high ISO and seeing that noise, you're going to start realizing that it's because of the lens. You would have figured it out, you know? So welcome to the Cardi crew. Thank you for becoming a member, Borgie. Let's go. Thank you. Welcome. So we got to push into the unknown, man, honestly, and know that this whole thing, this whole system that I got going on here, trying to help you get to the next level with your photography, it involves just all of that. It involves the community. So you have people next to you encouraging you and also saying, hey, how come you didn't submit photos? Or how, you feel compelled to participate. It's why my masterclass is a group scenario. And my masterclass starts in 50 minutes. So this podcast is OVER because I'm about to drop a masterclass. I'm so excited. And again, this is your last chance, by the way. If you want to get into this thing, there's a link in the video description that you're watching. Masterclass, I have about 25 incredibly anxious and ready people who I am about to give some science. So excited, guys. Consider joining the masterclass. I also do one-on-one training. I also have a newsletter called A Life Behind the Camera, which I put out every Saturday. All I'm doing is trying to help you get to the next level with your photographs. I'm trying to enable you to become a professional photographer. I'm trying to give you the confidence in yourself so you can actually lean into the unknown, jump out of the nest, and actually fly like you're supposed to be. Guys, thank you so much for watching. There will be no more beginner content on this channel. That's the last time. All of these mistakes that you heard here, I hope to not see when I review photos the next time. I love you all. Thank you so much. This commercial-free stream was brought to you by the members of this channel. If it wasn't for them, I would have had to drop commercials this whole time. But again, membership has its privileges, and because of these members, I'm able to make it so I don't have to actually charge any kind of AdSense money business. So yeah, all of the members here make it so I can do these live streams commercial free. I'm grateful for them, and you should be too. Also, I like to do a little credit scroll. So if you became a member in the last little while, you're going to see your name scroll across the top of the screen. I can't showcase everybody, but I can definitely give love to the last 25 people who became a member because you guys keep this shit going. All of the people who subscribed recently in the last 25, you're going to see your name scroll across the bottom of the screen as well. The Cardi method masterclass starts in moments. Details in the description of this video. Consider at least joining the mailing list because great info every single weekend. I love you guys. I'll see you at 4. You know who you are.